uh, publication before we graduated from this university. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any question after this session, you can raise hand and then you can directly give the question for Prof. Kieron. Okay, now we will start our discussion with Prof. Kieron. Time is yours. Thank you. Give applause for Prof. Kieron.
Hello? Hello? I think this is not all that it goes like that. Right. Okay, so as I was saying, the first thing when you're before you have collected any data, while you are designing your research about what you might do, well before the publication, you need to consult and have the approval of your institutional ethics board. You have one here. I tried to find a picture. I hope that, not sure, but I hope it is some of them. And it needs to be explicitly mentioned in the methods section of your article. If you look at international research publications, there will always be a section that describes what you did. You know, we interviewed children, we surveyed this person, we observed that. This research received a favorable opinion or was approved by research, the researcher's university, and be a bracket, and it'll give a reference number. When the journal sees that, they think this is a good research, and they'll put a tick, a big tick in a box, and it'll go off for review. That's the first step. So my first point is you should know who your UNESA's Research Ethics Committee is and how to contact them. Because without their approval for your research, it will not be published. You can publish it maybe in a smaller journal or a local journal, but if you're looking to publish it internationally at a high-ranking journal, you need that statement. So here's one from a publication I did with some people here, actually. Blah, 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 and it's only a survey. The survey researchers reviewed and received a favourable opinion by the Ethics Committee of the researchers' universities, and that's the reference number. Later on, we will discuss in the article how we gained informed consent, the procedures we did for recruitment. You really need to bear this in mind. And I say this because almost every article I have seen from Indonesia does not do this. Therefore, they do not get published in the top-level journals. So if you want to publish in a top-level journal, you need to do that. You need to have the approval of your institutional ethics board at UNESA, and you need to mention that in your article. Now, I may sound like a grumpy. What's grumpy? Do you know grumpy? Like a grumpy old man. Grumpy old man. And that is because I get very upset by this, because I see really good research that I think should be published. It's really interesting, and international audiences would love it. So much work going on in Indonesia, and it deserves to be read and seen, and people would pick it up and they would follow it up, but they don't, because it never gets published because of that. So that's why I'm emphasizing this point like a stuck, no, you don't have records. I would say a stuck record. Anyone remember records? Albums? No, forget that. And that's an old man's reference to records. But I say the same thing over and over again today, right at the start, because this is important. So if you choose not to do that, you will not be published internationally. Sorry. Yesterday evening, I just went on an education journal and looked at the requirements of the, I can't remember this journal. This might have been Asia Pacific Journal of Education, something like that, one of those journals. And I just looked in what they require for their publications. For relevant, blah, blah, blah. In the body of the manuscript, a statement that ethical approval was granted by the relevant institutional ethics committee. They require that before they will review your article. If you're lucky, they may ask you to supply it later, but most times they won't look at it. The next bit, of course, is you must state, and most people are okay on this, you must state that participants gave informed consent. Most people are good. You need also to give a little bit of detail on how that happened, particularly if you're working with children, because there are some issues there that need to be addressed about how children give informed consent. Anything else there? No, that was the main one. I just picked a journal at random, looked at their submission policy, Asia Pacific Journal of Education, and they require a statement from your ethics committee that it was approved. So that should begin before you start writing, while you're designing your research. Okay, ethical foundations. When you're writing an ethical section in your article, you need to bear in mind these things. Respect for learners, teachers, and communities. So you need to show. So that may be through not taking up teachers' time, giving children the option to opt out of your research clearly, so you're not forcing them, being aware of power relations. A classic example would be, I had a survey and I gave it to 400 children, 40 children in my class, and I got 40 replies. Every child wanted to do it. No child chose not to. And when you see that, you think, well, did they really have informed consent? Or was it because the researcher might have been their teacher telling them, you do this, or else do this, so that it's not ethical. I recently examined a viva for a student from Jamaica, and part of her thesis, the method section, was that no children would talk to her. And she was very worried. She went in to talk to the children, and the children ran away. And she wrote that in the thesis, and she was very worried. And we gave that a big tick because it showed she was not forcing them to take part. They had a choice, and they chose not to. So when we said that to her, she was very relieved, very happy. And the rest of the thesis, she did talk to some children eventually, but we could see the children had a choice. Justice and inclusion, avoiding harm to marginalized groups. So, supposing you are researching a sensitive topic, I can't think what it might be, thoughts on something like disability, and you're asking parents or other parents, what are your thoughts on disability? And they say, well, children's disability is caused by a taboo, it's a sin from previous generations, or it's something that the parents have done wrong, and that's why they have a child like that. And then you name the parent, you give the name of the person that said that, and they know the area, so you're exposing that person. So you've got, if you've got vulnerable children, and you name them, and we can locate their schools, that's not good. Another thing is, if you're talking about marginalized groups, are you giving them a voice in your research, or are you going in and stealing the data and running away? You want to be giving them a voice. Is there a benefit of what you're doing? Sometimes it's hard because you want to do theoretical understanding of something, but that alone is a benefit if you're moving theory on. And integrity and transparency across the research cycle. People should be able to see what you did. And in terms of ethics, that really comes down to, how did you identify the people you're going to do your research? How did you identify them? What did you do with that data that you have about them? And then what did you do with them? And it needs to be clear so people can see. So, learner-centered, if you're working in education, learner-centered, inclusive, we'll come on to that in a minute, and beneficent. Informed consent can be a tricky one. A classic thing might be that a researcher says, I gained informed consent from the head teacher of the school because they have the power to give consent for everybody. And then we will ask, well, did the parents give consent? Oh, we don't need to do that because the head teacher said we could come into the school. And that paper gets rejected straight away. So good practice would be, of course, the school have to give their permission. You have to give them a sheet that explains what you're doing so they understand. And they say, this looks good. We are happy for you to come into our school. And are you all education? Everyone here in education somewhere? Are you studying education? Everyone? Everyone? Yeah, okay, that's good. So, just checking. So in the school, then once you're in, there would be, you would use parental information sheets that says, here's what we're going to do. If you'd like your child to take part, please sign and return. Now that can be very difficult because parents not read it. They'll just put it in the bin. It comes from a bit of paper and they throw it away. You do need to get their permission to keep data on their child. And you need to, the saying about now, need to be visible in your research article. So a single line saying, we gain informed consent is not enough really. Permission, teacher was given to work with teachers in the school, or permission from the head teacher was given, and they sent consent forms to all the children, and those who returned the consent forms took part in the study, and this is where the children come from. Now, with the children, consent can be tricky. Little children, you know, do you give them a consent form to sign if they're 4 years of age? Probably not. The basic is that the children have to give their ongoing assent, not consent, but assent. So you, the researcher, can say, we monitored the research process and the children to check the children were happy, and they were ongoing step to take. If the children looked upset, we stopped the research. My early research was on children with severe learning difficulties who couldn't read. And the teacher said, I got the parents, got the school's permission, got the parents' permission, and went into the classroom, got the permission. And then the child is there, and the teacher said to me, they're very worried about reading. They don't like it. And I said, leave it to me. I am that, because it was my area. I can teach anyone to read. Hi. And I came in like that with my new technique, and I sat down, and this little girl came over, and I said, hello. And I turned over the book, and she stood up, and she ran. She ran out of the school. Then I could see her. She ran across the field, over the fence, over the road, and I think she might still be running today. She's probably miles away by now. So that was not really monitoring assent properly. I should have been more sensitive than present that child with something that was so difficult. So we have assent. And also use informed consent forms that are simplified for children. That's where AI, I personally found it very helpful. So I take a consent form which says, this is what the research, or information sheet, this is what the research will do. We're going to ask you to do this, this. Then I put that into, what would I put it into? Microsoft Copilot, something like that. An AI, thing I say, simplify this for a 4-year-old child. So a 4-year-old child can understand it. I check it, make sure it's okay, but that's helped greatly. And then you can give it to the child. Or you can use pictures. You know, this is what I am, a picture of yourself as the researcher, a picture of the child doing it maybe, whatever, but a visual representation. And always, if you have any questions or you don't want to take part, you ask the question, you don't take part. So it's nice and relaxed. So all of that, multi-layered. There's often lots of people who need to be informed about your research and give their consent for you to carry it out. Age-appropriate information sheets, plain language for children. If they're young, simple language, maybe pictures. If they are, I'm trying to think, if they're deaf and they cannot read, you can sign. And if you cannot sign, you can get a deaf person to sign your participation and consent material for the child and show them a video on your phone. Nowadays, it's great. You can have that and show that to the child rather than trying to talk to them and you can't sign, for example. In the old days, we'd have to go and get someone who could sign and bring them in, which is tricky. I've mentioned AI. A difficult one with younger people is this idea of their participation in the research being voluntary. Because you're an adult and they're a child, there is a power relationship. And so the child may feel they cannot say no. But you make it clear to the child that their participation is voluntary, and they can choose not to do it or they can stop at any time. And they can withdraw from your research and without consequences. It's hard to do because even if you tell them that, you as an adult have that adult-child relationship, and it can be seen as forcing them to do it. So you need to be very careful about that. The other aspect of that is if you're working with teachers and you're going to interview teachers, and the head teacher says, yes, of course, you can interview Mrs. A, Mrs. B, Mr. C, Mr. D. Because if the head teacher says it's okay, it's very difficult for the teacher to say, I'd rather not do it. But again, even in those circumstances, you need to make sure their participation is voluntary. and that they can withdraw. Privacy and confidentiality. Really, you want to reduce the identifiability of individual children and teachers as much as possible. You can use pseudonyms to do it. You can say you can bring people together and create a sort of model person. The main thing is that a stranger reading it cannot know the name of the child or the teacher and their school. Because in today's world, it's easier. I read something yesterday, and it was carried out somewhere in Gressick, I think. I didn't know where it was. I know where Gressick is, but I didn't know. They named the school, and then they were talking about a particular, educational intervention. So I got my phone out, I put the name of the school in, Gressick, the name of the intervention, and I could find the teacher they were talking about. So it's increasingly challenging to anonymize, de-identify participants. So you need to be very careful about how you do that. Unless you have explicit permission from the person to be named. So we were interviewing disabled teenagers a couple of years ago, and they wanted to be named in the research. They wanted their name, and they wanted what they said. So their quotes had their name because they saw themselves as disability activists. They wanted their names in the publication, clearly named. So that was fine. And on the participant information sheet and the consent form, they signed it that that's what they wanted to do. If you're working with children and adults sometimes, you may get what safeguarding disclosures. And so you don't need to put this into unless it's specific for the topic, but you need to have that in mind. If a child explains to you something inappropriate is happening or something dreadful is happening in their life, you need to have a strategy for what to do. Who do you mention that to? Who do you escalate that to? That's just like a general background rule. Some journals will ask you about that, but it depends on the topic. But all researchers with children and young people should have that in mind. In the UK, now the Indonesian situation regarding data storage, but in the UK there are very strict rules about what information can be stored about people. So when you do your research, it has to be stored securely, password protected, lock cupboard, not lying about. So if someone found your computer or your disk drive, flash drive, whatever, they couldn't access it. And even if they could, they wouldn't know who the people were because they've been anonymized. We have rules about how long you can keep data for and what you do with it. I don't know the situation here for that. But again, your ethics review board will advise you on that if there's an issue. Care with images, recordings, blur and anonymize. There are big cultural differences about that. In the UK, it's very difficult to take a photo of a child and put it in. I remember working in, I was in Zimbabwe, and people said, no problem, and they just sent me photos of, you will put these children in like this. No, we can't have the children. So at bare minimum, we blur their face. Or you can shoot them from the back of their head, so you just see them doing it. So you have to be sensitive about putting images of children and things. It's just part of data storage because it's personal information, like their name, what they look like, where they live, so they can be identified from that. And there are very strict rules for storing personal information in the UK, and the fines for breaking those rules are massive. I don't know the situation here. So you need to check the legal guidance from your university's ethics board on that. Oh, did I not? Oh, I was thinking. Methods when you do describing it, say, what's your sampling rationale? Why did you choose to sample this group of children? How were they? Were people chosen at random? Was it snowball sampling? No, or did you go and how did you find the sample? How did you find the sample of teachers? Usually, if I'm in my Indonesian work, I always say a seminar at UNESA. And during a coffee break, I put up an information sheet on a PowerPoint, and people who are interested, teachers who are interested, then got further details, and that's how we started, and that's how we selected our teachers. They volunteered to come in. Context descriptions, yeah. You need to give sufficient detail so people understand the context of your research, but you don't need to go mad on this and talk about too much detail, but enough so people understand the situation you're in, so they can then see whether that's going to generalize to another situation or not. And the ethical aspect of that is you want research that has meaning. So if your research has no meaning within the context or outside the context, that's not an ethically good way to proceed. Influences, instruments, like a questionnaire, for example. Back translation is the thing we use. It might go from Bahasa Indonesian into English, and then translate it back, or we have an expert review, and then we pilot it, we try it out. And we test the validity of it. We had a whole research project because we found that when we talked to Indonesian teachers, their concept for fun was very different to ours, and we couldn't understand each other. We used the same word, but we couldn't understand each other. So we pinged this around so we could actually go ahead with the research. If you're doing qualitative research, you need to have a little section on reflexivity, which shows how you've reflected on your role in the research as who you are. That may be, in some respects, related to your job. If your job is to promote swimming, and you're thinking, Mrs. B, swimming coach, head of national swimming team and swimming promotion, winner of £2 million grant for promotion of swimming, and you're researching whether swimming's a good thing, you may be biased. But however, if you are a mother of a disabled child and you're carrying out research, you may have your own opinions on disability, but your role will also give you insights that other people won't have. What's that noise? Can other people hear the noise? Not just me? Okay. So who you are influences what you see in qualitative research. And so you need to make your position clear, and that can be a positive thing. In fact, usually is a positive thing. I think the pizza is arriving. We've ordered pizza. So reflexivity is really important. It's really important. So I keep repeating the same thing here again because it is so important. What do international journals expect? They expect documented ethical approval and consent procedures. We gained approval from our university's ethics board, informed consent, we got permission from the head teacher, informed consent from the parents, and we told the children what was going on in an accessible way, and we monitored their assent. You should always refer to an ethical guidelines or ethical guidance that informs your research. So you have all of that, and then I think you probably might have COPE here. I can't remember what COPE stands for, but that's the ethical guidance I see in Indonesian research. So, our research followed the guidelines, COPE guidelines. In the UK, we might have BERA. complete and accurate reporting. And then those notes somehow get into your article without indicating that they're actual quotes. That's quite common. And it's not done deliberately. Not people think, oh, I'll copy something. It's just the way we write has changed. We can easily transfer text from different sources, and then without realizing it, we transferred that into our article. But of course, the journals will screen the articles, and it'll go ping, and they'll say these sections of your report come from other people's work. Undisclosed AI assistance. If you're using AI, you need to indicate where and when you've used it in the article. So, a good example. Recently, I did a review of doctoral training programs in Europe for a European organization. I got all the articles I could. Anyone use Mendeley? Mendeley referencing stuff. So I have my Mendeley articles. I took those out and I put them into Google LM, which is a little AI, Google LM, and I said, summarize the main points from this regarding, and I gave some factors. When I wrote that up, I said, this part of the analysis was conducted using Google LM, which is fine because it does not share data, it doesn't train data. I recently reviewed an article for International Journal of Inclusive Education, and the discussion was AI written. It was so easy to spot. At the moment, you can spot AI writing. You know, it usually has use of dash, slightly longer dashes, 3-part constructions, blah blah blah, A, B, C, comma. You know, and it does that twice. It's usually AI. So then I put it into my AI, and it said, "Yep, this is AI." But if you're using AI, say using AI. So you're working with children, we simplified the participant information and consent forms using AI and then checked them. Or in my case, I translated the consent forms into Bahasa Indonesia or into Chinese, we did recently, into Chinese using Google LM. We use that to translate and then with native speakers for validity. So there's nothing wrong with using AI, so long as you use it appropriately and indicate how you used it. However, some journals are very old-fashioned. They say that no AI should be used at all in your work. For me, I think that is from the Stone Age. I mean, AI is everywhere. It's on our phones, it's in our cars, it's on the telly. I have Alexa in my kitchen. You know Alexa? In my kitchen. So Alexa, what is the time? Alexa, turn on the light. Like, beep, beep. Turns the light. So to say no AI in a research paper I think is wrong. And those journals will change. But if you're submitting to a journal, check thoroughly if the journal allows you to use AI for appropriate points. I think increasingly, the main thing is that you say where and when you used it. Vulnerable groups. Sorry, are you all okay? Not exhausted? I'm talking a lot. You okay? Yeah, yeah. Let's have a little like that. Okay. Just relax. I'll go down the stairs. Yeah. Right. Vulnerable groups and sensitive topics. So if you're working with, for example, disabled children, or a sensitive topic, sexuality, or something that in the context, the society you're doing the research in is a difficult issue, you need to think very carefully about it. So safeguards for children, we mentioned that escalation process. Um, if children have got special needs, you need to make sure that your communication with them is understood. Care experienced learners, they're just an example of a group who may be at risk. Children who are brought up in care away from their families. Trauma, if children have a sensitive history and you're going to be working with them, you need to be sure that what you're doing won't make it worse. You need to think about how and what you will ask, and to pace it and to be supportive so that your research isn't inducing trauma in children who've already had trauma. For example, I'm interested in disaster risk reduction education. We wanted to find out what Indonesian students, their experience of that was in school. I thought we'd be talking about lessons they had had and what the teacher said. But for several of the young people too, they started talking about the day the flood happened and their village was taken away. The day the earthquake happened and the building fell down. So we had to think very carefully then about who and what we would ask. Incentives. Be very careful about incentives. So if you say, please come and take part in my my research on X, Y, and Z, and to do that, we're going to pay you £50 for 5 minutes work. You're going to get a lot of people, and they may put themselves at risk because they need the money, and they'll turn up. So you have to be careful in that and judge it appropriately. What is an appropriate incentive for children? What is an appropriate incentive for adults or teachers? Plan debriefing. So at the end of your research, you give them, participants, an opportunity to ask you questions about what happened, that you explain the results, if you can at that time, the results and your findings and what you said, that you will also give them a link to where you're going to post that information so that the people who took part can read your research. Oh, yes, this is one thing. In the UK, if you're working with... more pizza. The oven is ready. If you're working with children, vulnerable children, children with special educational needs, you may need, or any child, an enhanced DBS check. That means that it's a process that check, do you have a criminal past? Have you got a criminal record? Are there any cautions against you from the police? Are you barred from working with children? So you can't carry out research with children without a thorough check to show that your background is good and you're allowed to work with children. In Indonesia, I know you have the police clearance certificate. You know you don't? In Indonesia, I know you don't have a police... Do you have any, that's my question really, do you have anything equivalent to that check? So if you say, I'm a researcher, I want to go and work with this group of children, is there any check on who you are to allow you to do that? There is? What would it be called? Oh, thank you.
Okay. Well, there is something like enhanced DBS. I mean, SKCK is a police clearance certificate. Yes, we do have, but in particular, if we want to do work with children, there's no needs to have police clearance certificate, or should we have to show that? No, maybe just like some permission from our university or our policymakers and things.
Okay. So in that case, I think the key thing is when you have approval from your university ethics committee, that has much more weight because they're approving you as a researcher as well. We would sometimes have this in our research, but if it's not here, you can't mention it. We've mentioned some of this before. If you are, it's very easy now to record an interview and transcribe it. You know, we can do it automatically with our phones, with a computer. We need to be able to anonymize those transcripts. And it's hard to do, but we need to do that in a technological age. Where are you going to store your information? And retention schedules. How long are you going to keep that information for? We usually say anonymized data for 5 years in the UK researcher, because some 10, so that if the journal wants to check that your research is valid and you actually do have the data, you can show them. Where possible, apart from very sensitive data, your data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, so it can be manipulated in different programs, and reusable. In Europe and UK now, there's a tendency to, when we've done our research, we take our data, our raw data, anonymized, and we put it in a repository where other researchers can access it and use it in future. Some journals now ask you to comment, are you going to make your data available to other researchers? Are you putting your data in a store, the International Journal repository, to be fair, for fair use? So you will have to, if you haven't done that, you can say no, but you're asked to comment on that. Authorship. The last 2 articles I did, I had to use this contributorship to indicate the members of our team and what they did. Now, I'd never done that before, but last year I had to do it. I'll just show you. So this doesn't go in the article, but when I was submitting an article with the names of the authors, to know for each author who did what. You know, so who wrote the draft? They don't expect you to know all this, that you have a drop-down menu. So you have your name, you know, Kieron, me, Kieron Sheehy, and then a drop-down menu, and I did the methodology. Someone else, another author name, drop-down menu, they did the resources. So that's a sort of a fairly recent development. I think because had disagreements about who's included on the paper. My feeling is that all the teams should go on the paper because everyone chips in. So that was that one. Acknowledge the schools if the schools are happy. Depends on the nature of the publication. Be fair with practitioner co-authors. Discuss early. This is a thing where academics work with teachers usually, and then the poor teachers don't really figure in the authors thing. You know, we go into their classrooms, we work with the children themselves, we publish our paper, but no teacher's names appear. So as a rule, we tend to now put them as co-authors because we're looking at their work and what they did. Any conflicts of interest and funding sources. That's really more of an issue in health research now, where people are getting funding from companies and then doing research to show particular things. So, or climate change issues. But there may be a conflict within educational research. For example, autism. I reviewed a paper on the use of, I can't remember the method now, a method for teaching children with autism. And it was an interesting paper, But the person who wrote the paper didn't say that they invented and ran the company that made that method. So they were a commercial organization, and they were reviewing their own educational intervention, and they didn't mention it. Oh, done that one. This really is just to highlight. You'll get your reviewer will look at what you did, and if you've got through that hurdle, you'll get some feedback. We'll look at that later on in feedback. Respond point by point to the reviewer's comments and make it transparent. This is an example of a submission. We submitted an article, and reviewer 1 said this: the abstract is good, but it fails to state what the overall findings are. So we had author's report, good point, it's a good point, fair point. We've revised the text to make the findings more explicit, and then we show them what we did, highlighted in red. So we've responded explicitly to what the reviewers wanted us to do. Sometimes, very rarely, you need to correct the record. You've published something and you realize there's a big error in it. There's a big error in it, and you need to write to the journal and say, I'm really sorry. This thing we said is, could you publish a correction? And they'll do that. They'll do that. It is very rare. It is very rare. I had one where we published a table, and the table was the wrong way round. So it looked like something was happening when it wasn't. Then we had to just say, I'm really sorry, but we apologized. So, to repeat what I said and keep going on about this little checklist, ethics approval. You need, for your research, ethics approval, institutional ethics board. If you don't, you won't get published. You need to document your participant information process. Check that anonymization is complete. Your method should be nice and transparent about what you did. Any funding, credit completed, journal style followed. This is a biggie. Often people will write their article and send it to their journal, but they won't have checked the journal's requirements for style. And so if you're a reviewer reviewing for a journal, and it comes in and you look at it, and the referencing style is not what you want, what that says to me is that this person has never read the journal. They haven't followed simple guidance, so it undermines trust that they're a good researcher straight away. So follow the journal style. Open access publication. Now this is a thorny issue because some universities say, yep, you have to publish open access for the good society, but they won't cover the cost. There are ways around that. Firstly, some journals are open access. The other way is, does your university have a pre-publication repository? And if they don't, you need to get it set up, because it will save you as researchers a lot of money, and it will save the university a lot of money. What that means is, you put your paper into the Journal of Wonderful, Wonderful International Journal. They say, we love this, and we're going to publish it. And then what you do is you put your pre-published manuscript into the university repository. So your final stage, pre-publication, goes into the university repository where it can be freely accessed and open access. But you don't have to pay anything to get gold open access or anything. Many universities cover that gold anyway. But that is one way around. So you can put author-accepted manuscripts into the repository, and you don't need to pay to have open access. It is open access and freely available. It's also good in your information sheets for your participants. You can say, and the results of our research, you can access them freely here, and you give a link to your university's repository. The other aspect is whether you have your university uses an open data repository, and you put your data in. But the biggie is this one. So author-accepted manuscripts can go in. So all my work and the work of all my colleagues is freely, everything we've published is freely accessible, because we put the pre-published versions in the repository. So if you want to look at the stuff I published in, I can't think, say, think of a closed journal, I don't know, in the International Journal of Inclusive Education, and you don't have an account, so you can just go on the Open University, ORO, Open Repository, ORO, and you can see all my research, and you can download a copy there. And the journals are happy with that. Journals agree that's okay. So it's a win-win. You still get your publication in the journal, you still get the Scopus tick, but people can access your research for free. So I don't think at the moment that you have a pre-publication repository here, but I'd recommend you ask about it and ask about setting one up. It's a really good thing. Will save you time, save you money. Be good. It's ethically a good thing to do. Look up some ethical guidelines. Always helpful. Make sure you know which ones you're using. Oh, that's the one. Oops, sorry. COPE. That's the one I see in Indonesian research. Committee on Publication Ethics Guidelines. But find ones that work. Have we got time? Are you all exhausted now? Is lunch calling? What's the time? Oh. Shall we do this, or shall we have some questions? What do you think? I don't want to, because you've been very polite and listened nicely. I don't want to bore you and wear you down. We have time? We don't have time. No, we don't have time. Okay. Right. So any questions? That's me finished.
Check. Okay, everyone, if you have any question, you can raise hand. Yeah, there is one person. Okay.
Thank you so much. I have a question. Since previously you said that working with disadvantaged group, I used to be assistant teaching in the Blue Dragon of Vietnam, which is like a Pacific for disadvantaged group. And I totally agree with you that when you interact with disadvantaged group, you have to have your NDA and your police clearance certificate, because simply their background has a lot of damage we may not know about them, and their mentality and their physicality, do they get abused or not? So the question I'm asking you now, do you ever work with disadvantaged group, especially the one that I used to work with, like they were mentally abused, or they were run away from home, and or they were like sexually harassment abuse by their parent, and then most likely because they were sold to the border to, yeah, that's why I'm asking, because I'm kind of interested with that. And what is your method? Do you ever work with them? What is your advice? That would be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Tough question. I have colleagues who work in that area, who worked in Thailand and Cambodia for children in the sex trade. I don't do that. I'd be I would feel very uncomfortable, terrified, you know. So there is that. You have to feel yourself work in that area, I think. But my colleagues who do work in the area, they have themselves all have the checks, as you say, but they also have strict guidance and follow codes, and they have a hierarchy of reporting. But I think the difficulty comes within the context of the consequences of what can you do to change a situation that's happening, and what do you as a researcher value. I think there are potentially limits to that. So you have to do something that you think is in line with your values and is ethical, and that works in that context. But it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. I don't think there's an easy answer. If you're a researcher and you're seeking just to understand a document, that's an easier option. You know, we say, well, we've worked with these children and we found out this. But if you were a researcher you feel your role is to make a positive impact on the lives of those children through your work, then it becomes much more challenging. Often you'd be tied into an NGO or an organisation who would support you, and you would have direct implications, direct interventions as a result of your work. I haven't done that. I haven't personally done that. So I just commend you. Thank you. It's very difficult, but it's very necessary. But that's not my research. I haven't done that. But I was on that ethics board, a university ethics board. And when those reviews came in for people who were doing that work, we had a specialist colleague who would review those and offer advice and support, and had a knowledge of the country and co-workers in the situation. So it's brilliant work, but not my work. Sorry. So my advice would be to look at NGO guidelines along with countries' national guidelines and see how they meet. And so to plan out a process of support that is possible within that country. So if a child reports this, or you find a certain thing's happening, who do you report it to? What to do for the child? What do you tell the child about what you're going to do, and what are the consequences for the child to be protected? So that's as far as I would go. I would then hand to an expert, probably you. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. And anyone, if you have any question related to the publication, ethics, and something else, you can raise hand and then give the question. Oh yeah, okay. You can. Yeah.
Thank you very much. First of all, introduce me. I'm Zulfin from the Department of Elementary Teacher Education Program. What I want to ask is about the using of AI. As we know that we are living in the age of technology, in the technology era, we know that we can acknowledge that we use AI when we are writing our paper. So can you share with us how to write an acknowledgement in our paper when we want to publish internationally? Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. If I had in a table of results, and it said demographics of doctoral students across 5 countries in Europe, and then had the countries and all the figures. Underneath, I'd have that, and underneath I put data extracted by Google LM with the date. And then at the end, I'd give the list of references that went into that at the end. So that's just to show you and analyze it. I mean, if you're using statistics, anyone use SPSS? You know, statistical processes. Now SPSS is getting AI in it. Mendeley had AI. Yeah, so Mendeley now, your referencing software will be able to, so it's harder to identify it really. So for data analysis, definitely. For translation of the consent form, these consent forms were, consent forms developed, see Appendix 1, and then simplified using Microsoft Copilot and translated into French, whichever language. So it's just a simple little line at the end of it, or in the, under the table, or after what you did. So the consent forms are simplified using Microsoft Copilot. See Appendix 4, and you've got it there. The journals are always worried, not always worried, but they're concerned that the whole introduction is written by AI. Yeah, and you don't do that. You can use it to analyze numerical stuff. You can use it to simplify your consent forms and things, but don't use it to write your article. Having said that, you want sometimes it's good to get you, if you're stuck and you can't write, you could say, what's the outline structure for an article on teachers' perception of sport in schools? And sometimes it'll give you some headings, and you can use that to get going, and then you get rid of those headings in the final one, but the AI just got you going. It's going to get harder and harder, because this time next year you'll be writing and you'll be having AI suggestions coming in as you write. And the word, anyone remember the old paperclip used to appear? Looks like you're writing a letter. Would you like some help? No, it's going to be coming in and shaping what you're writing. So journals will have to change their guidance, but they haven't yet. At the moment, just for your analysis, show how you used it for analysis. Just for translations, show you how you used it there. For simplifying text, show you how, just a line, use it there. Keep it very simple and just highlight those bits. But again, check that the journal allows that. Most would, but there are some that still say, no AI. They think people have a pen and a piece of paper and they write it like that. They're living in 1975. But most journals now are acknowledging that AI exists. So good luck with the AI, by the way. Do you use any AI? Tell me what you use. Oh, ChatGPT. Google LM? Sorry, could you have the doodah?
Yeah, I use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Also DeepSeek.
Yeah.
Also, we know Notebook LM.
Google LM, yeah.
Yeah. Elicit.
Yes.
Yeah. Lit Maps, if you want to write a literature review.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe we know something else like, what is that? Uncertain.
Oh, I don't know answer to this. I don't know that one.
This is new
new one.
for writing a literature review.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of Google LM.
Yeah.
Because the other AIs, they take your data, and you have to be careful, and they share it. So
Exactly.
they learn about you, they learn about for example, you're working in Vietnam, you have some very sensitive information, and you say, I'd like to translate this into English for this article. And you put it into an AI, and the AI shares it with itself and trains it. So that confidential information has gone worldwide. Google LM doesn't do that. It keeps it in, and when you delete it, it's gone. So that's a little thing. Just check with your ChatGPT is naughty because they say they don't share, but they do. They do. There's a big court case going on. They say they don't share, but they do, I think. But Google LM seems one of the good ones. So in terms of ethics, Just look at the AI you're using and see, does it share your data and train itself on your data, or is it just working on it, like SPSS or Google LM?
Check. Okay. Perhaps before someone give the question, I will ask about the AI. Yeah. I have experienced that 2 months ago I tried to join at the conference, and they had give us the requirement. The AI checkers by Turnitin should be less than 25%, and it is quietly difficult for us because sometimes we try to translate it by using Grammarly on something else, and then Turnitin will detect it as the AI generated. So, uh, do you have experience about this one? Is it possible for second languages? Yeah, we as an English as a second language. It is possible for us to make the paper with a zero GPT generate program when we try to check it at the Turnitin.
So that so you said there's a limit of 25% or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very hard thing to do,
Yeah.
because it thinks that it supposes that AI just writes this
Yeah.
much. It ignores the fact that AI could analyze your data for you and do your findings, which might be 10% of your work, but the most important part. So I think putting percentage on it is difficult. It's a hard one. It's a hard one.
Sometimes we try to write it by ourselves, but the AI checkers say that it is the AI generated like that. So, what is the tips for us to write and pass the requirement like this?
I'm not certain what the requirement is. What's the requirement that you need to pass?
The result of AI checker by Turnitin.
Didn't get, sorry.
The result of AI checker by Turnitin.
Sorry.
The result of the AI checker by Turnitin.
The
So,
result of the AI
checker. AI checker.
ticker.
Check.
Checker.
Yeah.
Oh, so you
Yeah.
have something that checks AI, and if it says 25%, oh, like a Turnitin or a check. Yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult.
So, what is the tips for passing this requirement?
You want me to tell you how to subvert the system, how to get around the AI checker? Or do you want me to tell you how the system could spot AI? Improve it? Do you want to improve the catching AI or improve you getting around the checker?
Yeah, actually, it is the requirement for the conference. So we should have the proof of the AI checker, and it should be less than 25% generated by AI. But sometimes we try to write it by ourselves, but the AI checker say that it is generated by AI.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have this problem myself,
Yeah.
because do you know when you write you have a dash? I always, in my writing, use a long dash. Not many people do, but I do. Long dash. AI uses a long dash. And so when I write, sometimes people say, oh, AI wrote that. I said, no, I wrote that. I wrote that.
Yeah.
I wrote that before AI. No, so for the conference, it's hard. I mean, if you have to get past, you want to. Are you running the conference, or are you going to get in the conference? You are participant in the conference. I mean, one way around it is, I'm telling you how to cheat now. One way around it is to Google Translate, get your document, put it to Google Translate, put it to Russian, put it back to your language, and it will be less detectable by AI. Do that twice and you'll be fine.
Oh yeah.
But that's a bit of a cheat. That's not.
Okay.
But yes, the problem is that as AI gets better, they will think more things that AI that aren't. They'll see your writing, it'll be good, and they'll think, well, that must be AI. So it's hard. But if you do language translation, that will usually get round the checker. But I didn't say that. Don't record that.
Yeah.
That'll work.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Anyone, if you have any question, you can raise hand and give the question for these topics. Yeah, I think there is no questions. And if you have any conclusion for this discussion, you can give us the conclusion of our discussions. Now, yeah.
Well, thank you for listening so politely. I hope you remember my first thing. That's all I want you to remember. If you want to publish in an international journal, you need to have institutional approval and mention that in your article. Because every batch I review that don't get through to the journal is because of that. So if you do that, you'll be right on the way to publishing in an international journal. And I hope you enjoy doing so as well, because we need to read about what's happening in Indonesia. We do, and beyond. Thank you very much.
Okay, give applause for Prof. Kieron. Okay. Mohon izin Bapak Ibu, saya sedikit menyimpulkan. I will conclude the discussion with you in Indonesian. It's okay? Ya, Bapak Ibu, monggo. Kalau memang ya kesimpulannya dari diskusi kita hari ini adalah kalau Bapak Ibu memang berencana untuk mempublikasi ke jurnal internasional in the top tier journal, so kita harus memiliki ini ya proof of ethical clearance begitu, atau kalau di kita ada komite etik, teman-teman atau Bapak Ibu boleh untuk mendaftarkan penelitiannya di komite etik yang ada di LPPM begitu. Terima kasih untuk Prof. Kieron. Monggo, we will have take a picture together after this program discussion. Saya pamit undur diri, mohon maaf jika ada salah kata. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Silahkan monggo untuk maju ke depan atau gimana fotonya? Ya, silahkan maju ke depan, kita akan ada sesi foto bersama begitu. Atau ngadep ke sana aja mungkin teman-teman berdiri. Iya, teman-teman berdiri, kita foto bersama.